Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to Personal Evolution Unlimited podcast. And I have here a friend as a guest, Roger Heinanen from Sweden. And I just want to say, just in case I call him a different name, Cormac, it's because we are members of the same medieval society, and his nickname is Cormac, and I'm used to calling him Cormac a lot. So if I'm jumping between Roger and Cormac, that's because. Right, welcome. Thank you
Hello.
for making time. Hello. So I invited you to speak about kids' education because you are a teacher at Steiner Waldorf School, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. You see, I saw there were three alternative schools for education. I thought it was Steiner, Waldorf,
Hmm.
and Montessori. And then I found out that actually Steiner and Waldorf is one system. Is that
Yes,
true?
yes, that
Oh,
is. Depends a little bit on where you are in the world. In the States, usually they go by Steiner schools. Sweden, here we have Waldorf schools. Basically, the whole idea is the name comes from the creator, uh, Rudolf Steiner, who was the creator of it. The ideology, the way of teaching, and the the whole first school started at the Waldorf. I think it was like cigarette factory or something. Hence Waldorf School. So
okay.
it depends a little bit on where you are in the world, but it's the same.
All
The
right.
idea
So
of teaching is the same.
So it could that's why I was so confused. It's one and the same. So how long you actually teach at Visby on Gotland, right?
Yep. Yes.
How long have you been teacher for?
I was counting on that actually before. I think I'm up to 13 years now, if I'm not totally wrong. Yeah, 13.
13 years. So
Yeah.
how did you get to that? Have you always wanted to be a teacher, or how did you basically got onto this path?
Um, mm, well, basically, I never really like wanted to be a teacher. I've been trying lots of different jobs, um, but in general, one can say that um, I tried some jobs, and every time I quit a job, I realized that I went back into working with kids or with people or with people who with disabilities or whatever. So you're at one kind of work, make good money and everything, but it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you anything
Mm,
real.
mm,
Um, but my last years, I worked as a scaffolder. It was just great pay, but but you work with dead material. That's what
mhm.
it is. So basically, what it came down to is I decided I moved to Ireland for a short while, about 4 or 5 years, and decided that when I get back home, I'll become a teacher because I never planned on staying on the Isles and in any at any length. Um, so basically, studied up my grades and everything, and so I could actually go and become a teacher when I got back.
So was it the when you say to become a teacher, were you already aiming for like alternative style of education like Steiner Waldorf, or were you just thinking of normal style of education?
Um, no, actually, well, actually, I was my plan was, I think, was that I was going for like history and Swedish teacher, I think, because that was my main interests and so on, or English and history teacher possibly.
Mhm.
Um, and when I got to the place of where you fill in the forms for going to the university of well, becoming a teacher, etc. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna
So,
pull out some plugs
are
here.
you,
Sorry. I was
are you destroying your office at the
uh,
same time?
oh, oh shit, we're doing lots of stuff here. Sorry. I just tried to like make sure I wouldn't do any background noise here, but the other computer just went haywire. Anyway,
So,
so
uh-huh.
So I got there and I looked at the catalog at what you could do, etc. And I found that they had a what's called a education to become a Waldorf teacher. Now the interesting part was I hadn't thought about this for years, the whole Waldorf thing, but when uh, when I saw that, it actually sparked a memory I had from my own time in I don't know what it's called. It's a gymnasium in English. Time after basic school, age what is it, 15 through
Yeah,
19 or something like that.
grammar school. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went to when I was doing that. I had two friends who was there, Joel and Jacob, and they. I remember us sitting at a grammar test, Swedish grammar test, and they were just whizzing through this like it was nothing, absolutely nothing. And I always had a hard time with grammar. I thought it was seriously unfair. So
Mm.
I asked them, I was like, "What the hell? How can you just whiz through this?" And they just, well, it's easy. This means this in Latin, and this means that in Latin, and that means that in Latin. And I was like, "Whoa, what you meant? You learned Latin in school?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, enough to get us through this at least." So I was like, "What the hell kind of a school was that?" And basically, they had gone to the Waldorf school up in Delsbo, in northern Sweden or mid Sweden. Um, and I asked them about this because these two guys, they were extremely harmonious. They were very chill.
Mm.
Nothing bothered them in the world at school, and they just whizzed through everything. And they were both musicians as well. And they told me
Mhm.
one day that same thing. They were going through the math like it was nothing, and they said that, well, in our school we got to use our instruments. I think Jacob was playing the bass and Joel was playing guitar, and he said that excuse me, that they got to use music to learn math. And at that point, I was like, okay, so what kind of a goddamn hippie school were you guys at? What the hell is going on? And they told me about this, and that was the first time I ever heard about it, until I then saw it when I was going to pick my own education to become a teacher. So it was only on that thing. I was like, well, that was pretty cool. So I'll sign up there and see where I end up. And well, 13 years later, I'm actually, no, it's got to be more because it was 4 years of education. So 17 years later, I I'm sitting here, still a Waldorf teacher.
Wow.
It's kind of cool.
That is very cool. You know
Mm.
what? It's amazing, like how the seeds of some future bigger things are sown. So at some point, if you haven't
Mhm.
met those two guys and you didn't see the outcome of their education,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
It's
you wouldn't have picked that.
true that that is true. Absolutely.
You know what really impressed me, because a few years ago you took us to your school in Visby and you gave us a tour, and I was very impressed with how it's all set up, inside and outside, the way it's decorated, the natural colors, materials. And
Mm-hmm.
when you were explaining to us how you taught, like how you, for example, were showing kids or letting them see physics in action, for example, that you were moving that a stump of tree that
Oh
was
yeah,
cut,
yeah.
and they actually, and I thought, you know I so wished I could have gone to that school and actually learn this way, hands-on, and actually see it in action rather than just the dry, repeat and memorizing. I
Mm-hmm.
was so impressed with that. And I was even more impressed when you took us to the canteen
Oh.
and everything was organic, and there was like, you could say it's a small thing, but I was impressed that there were candles on for the kids and for
Mm-hmm.
the teachers, for everyone. And what struck me there was the way you're treating the kids. The kids were sitting with the teachers and with the staff and with each other, and it was just a feeling of absolute relaxation and equality and kind of harmony, which
Mm-hmm.
I did not remember from my own school. So,
Well, that's true.
So how does this all work? What is actually the Waldorf settings and education about?
Well, of course, if you want to dig into it like a lot, you can. Um, I try to I try to break it down basically into three parts.
Hmm.
Um, as when it comes to teaching, there's like three parts, and then there's like a philosophy in like what are we doing, why are we doing this, and the why, of course, is um, much more important than the how, because the how is just the how, and I'll get back to that. But basically, the whole idea is that you're part of something, greater, something bigger. We are all part of the ecology. We are all part of everybody else's life and situation. Therefore, if you've experienced that there was some kind of a harmony um, in the lunch situation, we don't talk much about it, but it seems as a given that the teachers sit with the students and talk. Um, and the discussions that goes on there m- might be as or even more important sometimes than the ones that actually go on in class.
Mm.
Um, and also that also means that the idea of using natural materials, organic food, etc. We put quite a lot of effort into making sure that it's not uh, you know, half or full fabricated, that it actually is made in the kitchen at school and so
Mm.
on. And I do believe that at most Waldorf schools has this idea, this philosophy that that um, you need to take care of the environment and take care of yourself because you're part of it. There's that's the only logical way to deal with things. Of course, it is not always easy in a world, for instance, right now where there's a great will to consume and buy and sell.
Mm. Mm.
That when you try to like make sure that you have things and materials that last for a long time. Um, Same thing with input, internet and social media, etc. It's kind of fun. For instance, we were years ahead of the rest of Sweden when we decided, for instance, to say that the kids had to turn in their cell phones when they got into schools.
Mm.
When they enter the school area, they have to give the phones to the teachers, and we lock them in for the rest of the day. They don't get them even at the breaks. And I saw just a few weeks ago or something that the Swedish government were planning on possibly making a law that will come to effect maybe next year sometime, that they could take phones or should take phones. Because same thing there, we look at the school day as a whole. I wouldn't call it it's the wrong word to use, organic, but it's the school day, when it begins, when it ends, it goes through a cycle. You do
Mm.
this and you do that, and you do this and you do that, and there's a plan to do this. There's a reason why we have the craft subjects in the afternoon. There's a reason why we have P&E in the afternoon, and there's a reason why we have theoretical things in the early morning hours, etc., etc.
Okay, so let's
So,
have a look into that because lots of
okay,
people actually don't know about this. So I didn't know about how you actually do things and how you schedule them and why.
okay.
So let's have a look at this. Why is it that way?
So basically, the idea comes from an idea that we, as humans and as persons, we breathe in and we breathe out, right?
Yeah,
Impression and expression.
version. Hmm.
So if you imagine yourself, if you go through a whole day and you only breathe in, you only take input, 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 it will be like, and you will gasp for breath afterwards. You need to breathe out at one point. So to make it very simple, without going into lots of detail, the idea is that you have some subjects where you breathe in, which is, for instance, when I lecture, when I talk for maybe
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes or an hour, and the kids just get fed with input. That's them breathing in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
After that, if I were to take another lesson that also is breathing in, then they don't get the chance to exhale, which means any craft like art or wood shop or what's it called, fabric. You know, when you work with fabric, textiles,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, gym, all these things, music, um, they are that where the kids give something from themselves, right? It's an
Mm-hmm.
exhale. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to, if you're creating something with your hands, you have to take it something from yourself and put it in your hands and put it on the
Yeah.
paper. So if you take all the subjects you have in school and you divide them into exhale and inhale subjects, then you have the philosophy. And that philosophy does not only go over the day; it also go over the month and even over the year. So when I, for instance, put up the different periods of subjects, that's another thing in Waldorf schools. We do periods of, for instance, like 4 weeks, the same subject between 8 and 10 in the morning.
Okay.
Um, that also comes with the whole register of exhale and inhale. So, for instance, I often begin the year with a math period because that's time to start school. Big inhale for like a
Mm-hmm.
month, and then you do something else, possibly, well, like physics, for instance, which can be very practical,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so on. So that's the idea of inhale and exhale. It's it might sound weird, but the idea that how we teach and how we learn also is affected by our body rhythm
Oh
and the
yeah.
rhythm of nature and the rhythm of everything. For some, it might sound like pure hippie shit and very, very, very goofy, but honestly, it's not that strange.
No,
Not
actually
if,
it
not if,
makes so much. It's just very logical if you
yeah.
think about it. Because I'm listening to you here, and I'm getting all. This is awesome. This is awesome because it's basically pure Taoist science for me. Because it's
Mhm.
like you guys, you're Taoists,
Yeah,
basically
yeah, yeah.
living with the rhythms yin and yang, the one that support each other. They are always in dynamic movement, and
Yes.
they are holistic. They create together the one. And as you said, when you are taking in, when you are learning, you need time for the exhale, which means you need to integrate what you have taken in, right? You
Yeah,
need some time away from it.
yeah. There's
So
a
that
reason
makes it
why people
perfect.
say that you have to sleep on things to have them make sense. Um,
Yeah.
and if you want to go all sciency about it, just look at nature. Nature will
Mm.
always try to go for balance,
Yeah.
no matter what. You know, I just taught physics with electricity, and we talked about static electricity. You know, if you rub your head against the balloon, the reason why the balloon sticks to the wall is because nature wants balance, and when you have loaded it full of electrons, it's imbalance. So it's actually extremely simple when you think about it.
You
But
know?
yeah, well, and I would. This is just my personal view on things. I do believe that the world as it is in a state of imbalance. So
Oh
unbalance.
yeah, that's an understatement, I would say. My personal
Yeah.
opinion, but I do hear these opinions around a lot. It
Mm,
makes sense. It is in very much, and it's trying to balance itself out, and it's in the ugly stage
mm,
globally. So,
yeah.
but the
Um,
education is so important here, especially for the new generation,
mm,
because when I'm listening, and when I was listening to when you were taking us around the school, and you were telling us the stories how you teach and how you approach things
mm,
individually as well as class based. I was just thinking, oh my goodness, if I had a start like this instead of the command and control,
mm,
really tough education, really dry education, I didn't have to spend so many decades. I never know how to say this word.
mm,
Apologizing to all those whose first language is English. Um, 20 years undoing what the education did to me. Though at the same time, I'm very grateful for getting education, especially as a woman, because outside the small, relatively
Mhm.
small bubble of American society, it's not a norm. So I'm grateful for getting
Yeah.
education. But at the same time, I think our education, especially in a world that is trying to balance itself or getting itself into more balance, needs to change because
Mhm.
we are running generally on an old model that is no longer fitting and
Mhm.
it's just so restrictive. So that's why I'm like, I want to talk to Roger about Waldorf and about all this new approach. But it's not that new, is it? Because
No, it's
Waldorf
pretty old.
started when? It's very old.
It's 1800. I don't know exactly the exact dates now, but I think 1800 something. We just celebrated 100 years celebration recently as well. Oh
So,
yeah, I was just gonna get back to we talked about the two things, the uh, the why we talked about,
mhm,
like why do we do it, and then the how is also you same thing there. You can dig in seriously deep into all
let's
kinds of
go.
ideas, but in general, the short part of it is that if you look at a human, most people they they learn by one or out of three ways, and they're sometimes intermixed with each other. But in general, most people have one like main line where they learn, and it's either theoretical,
Mm,
you sit and you learn and you read and you get the the um, uh, the information in a theoretical way, or it's a practical. So you need to like work with your hands, work with your head, do things, build things, and create things.
mm,
Or it's in the aesthetics where you need to use art in one way or another. You sing, you draw, you paint, you do small models, you do whatever. So in general, the ways that we teach, every subject we teach and every lesson even we teach, all these three elements should be included.
mm,
So for instance, if I teach math and I take geometry, for instance, I've done this. This is actually something that I have done. I talk to the students about the different qualities of a sphere and how it works. What's the diameter, what's the volume of it, etc., etc., and how it works. So we have the theoretical thing. We write down the formulas, etc., etc., and then I bring out a piece of clay and I tell the kids to form a sphere with clay under the table. They're not allowed to see. So just work with their hands until they have a perfect ball, basically. And then they can go on with that for a long time to get it as perfect as they can. And then we look at the ball, and all of a sudden we have both the art of actually creating, and we have the practical of creating something with your hands. And then you take the little wire and you cut the ball in half, and all of a sudden you can actually start calculating things and stuff like that. So that's just one example on how you can make it both art, um, practical, and theoretical in school. And it doesn't have to be math. I recently did it in my, what was there, sixth grade, when we were talking about the Roman Empire in the history period,
mhm.
and we made shields, we made scotums that
Yay.
were child sized, and I had them out. They had to build the shields, and they painted them in really nice Roman pictures on them, and we were actually out marching and did formations. We did the turtle, and we did the walls, and they learned a few commands in Latin, etc. So there you have it again. You do something practical. They know all these things. They know all the history just by me lecturing them in class, and then they have to also have the art to make things. I could actually
That's awesome.
possibly send you some pictures.
Oh, that would be cool. Thank you. I would have loved this as a kid because I found that remembering and memorizing Barota from a dry textbook absolutely unbearable.
Yeah.
So you're cramming in theory, and you only recall it for the exams, and then you forget it because it
Yeah.
just doesn't
Yeah.
stay in. But whether once you had your hands on, once you have like marched around and doing all these things, making things, it will stay with you. So you will always recall it. It will be there.
I think so. I hope so, at least. You know, I
Yes,
think it.
I mean, okay, I was one of the kids that things that I liked
Mm,
at school, I could get by quite easily. They came easily to me, but things that were harder and that I could not see the practical use for myself as a kid, you
mm,
don't. For example, if the math is really, or the physics is really dry and
yeah.
they don't tell you what you will be using it for or how it is relevant to your life outside school, apart
Mm,
from the marks.
yep. Yep.
I hated it.
Yeah. It is. It is. It was. Could be quite boring. Yes.
Like, so I'm not a math person. I have been saying I'm not person for years, but then I
Mm.
realized it's maybe the way I was taught. Because if I was taught a
Uh,
different way, I
I believe
would
so.
have, I would have probably not have such hard time with numbers.
I, I think that's actually the most with most people. I think most people that have had that situation where school has basically bled them dry of any kind of inspiration or lust. Then they'll just take that with them, and in worst case scenario, they actually send that down to their children as well. That's one of my rules when I'm working with parents. I tell them in no how should I phrase this? I explained to them that in no shit terms that they are not allowed to say that any subject is hard or any subject is boring. They are not allowed to do that. Oh, I get just got invaded by kids here.
Okay. That's all
Uh,
right, no worries.
but, hello.
Do you want me to pause?
No one. I'll
Hello.
just
That's all right.
I'll just lock the door. Yeah.
You've forgotten the door. You've forgotten to lock yourself in.
Yep. There we
Which
go.
one was this?
I I don't know. One of
Which
them.
of the twins? One of the twins. To protect the identity, I will take it out. That will be the one thing I will take out. Okay, I do that for kids. Occasionally when I record,
Yeah.
kids come in and it's the only time I edit something because
Oh,
just to
no.
protect them.
If you want to keep the, you can.
Okay. Well, if you guys are like okay with this, just I'm very
Sure.
careful about kids' identities
Yep.
on public in the public social media.
Yep. Yep.
That was
Oh,
nice though.
no worries.
It's like if you don't lock yourself in, that's it.
Yep. Yep. I have to blame myself.
And well, back to the parents. I like that you're
Yes.
working with the parents as well. It's just not the kids because often what I see in the mainstream, and I will
Yeah.
be talking as say naming it as mainstream, is that basically maybe 50% more or less, it depends, of parents are like, yeah, here, take my kids. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I will come to maybe when, we have the teacher parent meeting and I'll take and I'll ask some questions and I'll go away and I won't be involved, unless something is going wrong, obviously.
Mm.
Um, so I like the way that you actually work with the parents to slot into what you're doing there and why. It's
Mm.
like, yeah, do not, because kids are, what do they say? Since they are born till they're about 7 to 8, maybe with some it's 10 to 12, are like sponges. They just
Mm.
take on everything subconsciously. So we inherit conditioning and programming in families. Yeah, like my great grandfather had this habit, and he thought I don't know. He thought that money is wrong,
Mm.
therefore it's going to be probably inherited by his kids and by their kids, and it will go in the family. So I think what you said and what you guys do is very important. So
Mhm.
not support any of these negative conditionings and programming.
Yeah, and it is hard. As you say, society is more and more going towards a individual um, based idea, and a lot of well, I've been working, as I said, I've been mostly working with teenagers, and to some extent, you get the feel sometimes that parents, and I can, having kids by myself, I can definitely understand this. That, oh my God, they're teenagers, nice. I can just leave them be for a while. They can actually handle themselves. But in my opinion, if you thought that you had to put in some time with your smaller children, yes, you have to, because otherwise they will not survive. They need food, they need sleep, etc. But
Basics.
if that's basics. But if you think that you can get away with not spending time with your teenager, then you're up shit creek, because they need it as much or more than your children does. Because when the teenagers fuck up, they fuck up in a way that might actually destroy their whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting. This is just my personal philosophy. It doesn't have anything to do with the Waldorf thing. But after been working so many years with teenagers, that's also one thing that I tell the parents at the meeting, um, is there's one thing um, that is more important that I work with. All the subjects, they're basically tools. They're
Mm-hmm.
tools. Um, the only thing I work with through the years that I have them as my students when they're teenagers is self-esteem and confidence. They need
Yeah.
to get this hammered into them that they can do anything and they can be anything. And all these subjects, they're just tools. Self-esteem, 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 and confidence, confidence, confidence. Because teenagers, in many ways, are so left out to the world, and they're just tiptoeing into the grown-up world, and they have really no clue about
Mm.
what the hell is going on. Um, and they're
Yo.
very often afraid, actually.
Mm. Hell yeah.
And yeah, but
It's a fragile time, actually.
yeah,
Like all that bravado that is often shown on the outside by teenagers is just like dipping their toe into the world, into the big scary world, and
yeah.
not knowing what the hell is going on.
And at that time, they need to know that their parents are always going to be there to like help them out and be there for them, no matter how much they fuck up, basically.
Hmm. And that goes the same for the teachers.
Mm.
Because that's also I think the two most important parts of your life when you're a kid and then when you're a teenager is your family environment and
Mm.
then your environment at school because that's where you spend most of your time.
Yeah.
That's where you have your basic group of peers.
Yeah.
That's where
And
the
it,
peer pressure comes in and all that.
yeah. And it's kind of an interesting idea. You hear it sometimes. Actually, it surfaces up once in a while that teachers are, we're not allowed to do our job. It's just to teach the children. We have to be, we have to be mom, we have to be dad, we have to be best friend, we have to be the minister, we have to be the priest, we have to be the cool guy, we have to be the friend to cry on, etc., etc.
Blimey,
Uh,
that's a lot of pressure.
yeah, and a lot of people say, oh, we should keep teachers should just be allowed to teach. The parents should like teach the kids to behave and etc., which is true to some extent. But if you think that being a teacher only has to do with teaching, then you will be, in my opinion, very, very brusquely and suppressively woken up. Because it's the same thing there. It's just a matter of logic. How many hours do I deal with people's kids? In general, through the 3 years of school between grades 7 to 9, for some families, I spend a hell of a lot of time more with their children than they actually do at home. Because
I
after
see.
school, they go to training or they go to a practice or they do this and they hang out with friends. They might come home for dinner to have dinner with their families and then they go online. So the what do you mean, quality time that
Hmm.
your average parent has with a child today in the society of social media and practices and trainings, etc. you're talking maybe, if you're lucky, an hour or so a day.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and if you then think that the teachers who spend maybe 5 or 6 hours with them won't have any impact on, like, um, what's called upbringing and values and social training, etc., then I would think that you are delusional.
Delusional. That's true because I mean, there are the other major role models, like the key role models, apart from again, your closest family or your closest environment. I don't mean that the people that they see on TV and social media are real role models. Okay, there's something
Mm,
rubs off as well, but they are as a teach you as a teacher you are basically modeling their behavior to subconsciously a lot. The
mm,
way you are behaving, the way you're approaching them and others,
yeah,
that,
yeah.
and the way you are relating to them and you're behaving towards them. That's why I was so impressed, for example, just with the simple canteen, the feeling of equality, that actually respect towards the kids,
Mm,
because what I was used to, what I was growing up, and mostly is in the mainstream education as well, a lot command and control.
mm,
The teachers and the adults are the ones who are kind of bossing the kids around, and kids need a little bit of bossing. Of course they need some amount of bossing, you know
mm.
to set healthy boundaries.
Absolutely.
There is I don't like the hierarchical, the really strong command and control hierarchical thing. You're a kid, you don't know anything,
Mm,
and you just have to listen to me, and I'll tell you how things are done, because I have seen and experienced in my own childhood that there were moments that I knew more as a kid than the adult that was telling me something, and I knew it consciously. I was just looking at that adult, 6 year old, and I was
mhm.
thinking, you don't know anything, do you?
Yeah.
This is obvious. So the kids, it's like, I like that you're treating them as real human beings that know things,
Mm,
that have personalities,
mm.
that they are being listened to
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and
you need to do
respected.
that. There's, in my opinion, and I guess that's a difference between the old school of when we were growing up, and the school in the 60s and the 70s compared to now. Um, and I guess that could also be a personal thing, that I don't expect to. I expect to be respected as a person, and as a human. Um, but my age and position as teacher, in my opinion, should don't need to be. I don't need to create the respect for that. But if I want respect from my kids, my students, I need to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, and I know that there are definitely several teachers that disagree with me on this, and we can have heated arguments about it.
Of
But
course.
I believe that respect is something to be earned,
Mm.
uh, and when you do have each other's respect, then what you can do is magic. Um, I've seen some teachers come in and they basically go full authority on them, and the only thing that happens is that they close down. The
Mm.
kids close down because they don't see any reasons to learn from this person. Um, and that's a tricky one, especially I think for older teachers that might have a different take on the thing.
Mm. Well, it's true that there is the other argument that is being heard a lot these days, is that kids are allowed too much freedom and they are very disrespectful and they do not respect any authorities, including their parents. And so yeah, we
Um,
could have heated arguments with the
yeah,
pros and cons.
but the thing is, um, the respect, you can still get respect by being firm.
Hmm.
I have told my students over the years sometimes in extremely harsh language, to basically saying that you have fucked up so royally that I'm seriously pissed with you,
Hmm.
and this is how we're going to do about this. So there's no question about it. a leadership in the classroom is needed. Do
Yeah.
not believe, do not for a second let it down so that you can be first friends and then teachers. That won't fly, because the kids also need leadership in the classroom. They need to like know where to turn. Um,
Oh, yeah.
that's a
That's
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 a
an awesome point.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that I have to be nasty to them or that they need to be afraid of me or anything like that. It's just for them to understand where this is going and what's going to happen. I don't know how much time we have actually. I'll just keep babbling here.
We have plenty of time, and
Okay.
and then when we are nearing the time, I will tell you and
Yeah,
give you 5 minutes
sure.
to beforehand.
Um, One of the things I went. This is a few years ago, and I can tell you how this can happen in in the situation. So
Hmm.
I was actually on parental leave at that point, and the teacher in the class got some health issues and needed to take a break. So they called me up at school and called me up and asked me if I could
Fill
uh,
in.
yeah, if I could like end my parental leave a bit short and come and take this class because they were out of teacher. Now this tech class had been in a situation where many teachers had come and gone for them, so they never had any kind of stability
Hmm.
over the years. And from the outside, this class was also a very, very, very turbulent and not so nice in many shapes. Basically, what has happened is that they had gone like all Lord of the Flies on themselves, which means that they would start to make their own rules and their own ideas on how things should be done. Uh, your basic trouble class, or what you
Hmm.
would call it. So, and it was kind of fun. So I got in. So sure, I can come back and work, and I did. And they only knew me because this was sixth grade. They only knew me from the higher grades, and they had this idea about that I was, with me as a teacher, you could watch your movies, and you could be fun, and you could have fun, and you could do all kinds of funky stuff and goofy stuff, and everything was hunky dory. And so I took 1 week in the classroom, and they had all kinds of, it was the whole classroom was a mess, and it was there was so much shit going on, and they were absolutely out of control.
Hmm.
And I let them be there. I let them be there, and you could basically what I did was I did a scan over the room, and I picked up who was the ringleaders, who was the one starting up everything, who was the quiet people who were sitting in the corner just waiting for class to begin, who was the followers. Oh, well, basically get the peg on everybody in the class.
Hmm.
And as it always is, there's like two or three maybe that is the instigators of pretty much everything. You have a hierarchy: who's the top dog, and who's the leader of this, and who's the leader of that, and who's the people being bullied around,
Hmm.
and who is the followers, and blah 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 blah. Right. So it took me a week about to get that sorted, and then I came in, and they had built little cabins, and they had built little houses out of benches, and it was crazy. So and the reason for this was that every time a new sub came in, it just stayed for a little while, and then they either ran that one out of the classroom or it came to a new place. So no continuity at all,
Hmm. No safety, basically. There
no
is no
safety.
safety. No.
And so I did. What I did was I came in after that first week during the weekend, and I basically blew everything out of the classroom. All their old cabins and all their old paintings and whatever. I left one little memory thing from their old teacher. Um, Other than that, I just put all the benches in a row, like in a horseshoe shape,
Uh-huh.
and put the names out where they're supposed to sit, and just blew everything else out of the classroom. It was totally clean, like feng shui, straight off. Um, if it wasn't needed, it wasn't there. Full stop.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I stood in the classroom and waited for them to come into the classroom. And when they got in, there was there was a shout. They were just screaming straight out. It's like, what the fuck have you done with our classroom? What the hell is going on? Rah, 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 rah.
Change.
They were extremely upset.
Hmm.
And that was one of the few times I raised my voice at them. I didn't need to raise maybe 2 or 3 times over the last, no, what is it, 5 years that I had, no, 4 years after that. So basically what I said is I just, in a loud voice, and I can't do a loud voice when I need to, and it's like just shut up, sit. And it was like totally quiet in the classroom. And these they were like they they looked like they'd been, struck by a car or something.
Oh,
And they looked like all afraid. And I said, "You have places where your seats are. Sit." So they went around and sat down where their place were, and it was quiet. And somebody was trying to like word or something else, but I said, "No, sit." Okay, there was quiet. And I told them that now this is the way it's going to be. Now I am your teacher. You are my class. I decide what goes on in here, and we're going to be working with each other for the next 4 years. Get used to it. And then somebody went again, but no, there's no buts. This is not communication. This is information. Are we? Do we understand each other? And well, it was a little bit hard time to begin with for them.
mm.
But when I left them in ninth grade, basically we are all still very good friends, and they're out now working in real life. And often when I meet them on town, they're like, "My God, you saved us there. You came in and you broke a bad thing and made it better." And they all went out with great grades and everything was happy. And yeah, so but I never was their friend foremost. That is important.
Well,
But
that's not your job, is it? It's
no,
not your
exactly.
job. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I love, what you said there, and that was the key word, leadership.
Mm,
Yeah, and it's like kids. When I worked with kids before, I learned that it was surprising for me at the time that they needed the firmness because kind firmness, but firmness because it's a safety zone for them.
yeah,
It's like their job is to push the boundaries, and your job as the adult, in the leadership role, in the authority role, is to show them the firm boundaries because that gives them actually safety
yeah.
that they need.
A thing that I remember from that exact situation when I told them that, like, and there was quietness, and I could almost feel this communion exhale as especially those kids who has not been leaders, who have been just sitting for waiting for something like to like not be crazy, and they just like together exhaled and say,
Uh,
"Okay, finally, thank you for this," or something.
Uncertainty is really tough even for adults, let alone for kids and teenagers. That's actually uncertainty is the most scary thing if we know it consciously or not.
One
So
moment,
that's
please.
what you gave
Somebody
them.
knocked on the door. Give me a second. Hello. Yes.
So what how did you come up with this approach? What was your reasoning? Why did you decide to do it this way with this class?
Um, well, I don't know exactly how much of an idea it was, but for me, it was the feeling that they had been, they had been left out. They had not gotten for quite some time uh, what they should have had, and the
Hmm.
insecurity had started to affect them as a group, and
Hmm.
of course, then also affecting the rest of the school and the rest of the classes, so on. Um, and my idea is like somebody needs to take charge here. That's just it. And I think that when it comes to leadership, I think that is quite possibly one of the things that a lot of teachers miss out on, that could actually be their most important skill to work with. I've seen teachers that are fantastic at their subjects. They are extremely good at their subjects. They might be professors, but if they can't be in the class, if they can't, you know, work with the kids in a way that they are, I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I can see it when they expect that their knowledge of the subject is enough. Um, and I don't think I don't think that worked at any age, actually. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was in a situation like that when I was during the education to become a teacher. I remember it clearly. We had a physics teacher who was talking about planets and astronomy, etc. And it took us 5 or 10 minutes, and we were all lost. He had no clue. He was fiery about the subject, and he could talk about hours about it. But he lost us as a group within 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And at one point, I just told him that you do understand that we have no idea what you're talking about at this point. You should probably say something different to do it. And he was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then he continued the same way. So, but I think that when it comes to education and trying to make other people learn something, you have to have that sense of leadership because in any kind of situation where you work with a group to try to get them to do something that they might not like
Not want to.
spontaneously want,
Yeah.
then you have to include leadership. It's That's just the way it works.
It is. And now a question is also because there are certain approaches to leadership, or ideas what leadership should be. Again, you have the command and control leadership, you have different
Mhm.
types of leadership. Now,
Yep.
which one works where? Because I'm finding that command and control is good in military,
Yep.
in police,
Yep.
I
Yep.
have been through that and I could absolutely see how it has its place there.
Mhm.
But other forms of leadership were also brought in to make it work from different aspects. And that
Mhm.
command and control doesn't do everything. It's like this is how it is. It cuts out the essence of humanity and the individuality of the person, but also the essence of the group when you're working with a group. So
Yeah, it all depends on what you're after, I guess.
true.
If you want people to blindly do what you say, um, and not question an order, then like if it's military, I guess, or the police, then absolutely. But there needs to be some kind of trust in the command chain, I assume, for
Yes.
people to do it. People won't go into suicidal missions just because if somebody tells them to. There has to be some kind of a trust, and of course the situation where like you don't need to know all the details. You just need to stand there and do this. And
Army of cyborgs. Yeah,
yeah,
doesn't work with humans.
exactly. Um, but school is I don't know. In one of our school writings, when we a few years back, they said something about Waldorf education. See if I can phrase this right. Education is not about filling a bucket; it's about lighting a fire, and that
That's
to
awesome.
me is ex- exactly what it is about. My leadership in the classroom has to be about them getting an interest, them finding an interest, them possibly, if this is such a small thing as understanding why you shouldn't put water on flaming oil, um, but it has to pique an interest. And if you, and I think for me, my leadership in the classroom reverts around that, basically saying, if you'll allow me, I can show you some really cool shit, and but I can't do it unless you're willing to give it a shot, unless you're willing to try, or
Hmm.
because if you're not willing to give it a shot, if you're not willing to try, then I can't teach you shit.
And that's what you said also when we were talking about command and control. There is one person that is giving the command and controlling the whole, but what is missing, what you said now, is that there has to be collaboration. It's a partnership,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
this,
The thing is, I can't teach unless they're willing to learn.
and they would be willing to learn if you show them something interesting, as you said, as if you light the fire.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I
it's
think so.
it's just like so much interconnected Give and
So
take.
so it is kind of fun, you know. Sometimes once in a while you sit down and you think about the whole teacher perspectives, like what am I supposed to do as a teacher, and especially then maybe as a Waldorf teacher then, because it is interesting, you know. I have multitude of subjects. You know, I teach chemistry, I teach physics, I teach math, I teach English, I teach Swedish, I teach theater, I teach all kinds of things, right?
Wow.
um, and then I'm like, how is this possible? Who in their right mind could actually do this and actually get something out of it? And somebody said that, well, you know, teachers, you know, pat yourself on the shoulder. A teacher that actually manages to stay on for a few years and actually like the job. I have to remember, I seriously like my job. I don't have any kind of at all feeling that I don't want to go to job. I really like teaching still after 13 years with teenagers. I might be insane, but that's the way it is. Uh,
Insanity always helps a
yeah,
little bit.
but then if you look at it from a, like, if you step out of the situation,
Mhm.
it's a crazy situation. Who in the right mind could actually do this properly and teach all these subjects
Well,
and
you're
relearn?
obviously doing it.
Yeah, but I'm not the only one. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I believe, in my opinion, I don't think it's specifically Waldorf teachers doing like, "Way, we shall rule the world" kind of thing. But I think that teachers that have that in the back of their head, that it's about igniting a fire. You like what you do when you see that light come up behind the kids' eyes, and they're like, "Oh shit, this is some cool shit." At that point, you know you succeeded, right?
Mhm.
Because you might have just lit a little bit of fire in their brain to do things or create things or make things happen.
Mhm.
And I believe it happens in all schools, of course. It's just that I don't think that, and this is is a broad generalization, but I think that some of the more mainstream, let's use that word again, schools don't have the um, what's it called? They don't have the possibility to
Yeah, they
do
have got
this.
tight
Tight
structures.
structures that, you know, that sure. I, for instance, like me, I I have to follow the Swedish curriculum, right?
Mhm, mhm,
That's no. I know I teach exactly what the other schools are teaching according to things, but I get to do it my way. How I do it, how I do it
mhm,
is totally up to me. There's nobody coming and say you have to do this, you have to do that. Not even my principal. My principal is like, all right, are they learning stuff? Yes, they are. Good. And then we do the national tests and national exam like all schools does, and apparently it actually works.
and
So,
you have results, and that's the thing.
oh
It's
yeah,
like
yes,
you
absolutely.
can do things two ways, and that's how I always used to go to my interviews for new jobs. I would tell them honestly, say, if you micromanage me, if you tell me you have to do you need to get this result, and you need to take steps exactly this way in this style, I would be mediocre to really bad. If you tell me I want you to reach this result and leave me to it, I
Mm,
will do it the best possible my way, within reason, within certain rules.
yeah,
I will be awesome. And that's the same what you said here.
mm, yeah, sure.
Because if you are allowed to do it, to get the results, do it within certain way, but not being like squeezed out by rules how
Mm,
exactly you have to do it, then it's a totally different thing.
absolutely. It's a saying that it's not a modern saying. It's a saying that the Rudolf Steiner, the guy who, you know, came up with the whole idea of how to teach, he basically said that teachers are supposed to be artists. Think
Ah,
nothing else. If you're a teacher, you're an artist, and you your subjects and the students and everything. It's like the canvas and the paint. But make no mistake, a teacher is an artist, and it's an art form to teach, which I think is really cool.
It is very cool, and I think it's very truthful. Though some like there's lots of great teachers out there too. Some of that in the more restrictive, and they still manage to
Absolutely.
do their art. But it's just like there is a
I guess
lots of
those are the ones we remember, right?
yeah, yeah, those are the ones
Mm.
that remember, and then but there is still so much demand on teachers because we have friends in the mainstream schools as well, and I remember all the pressures. It's about not just about teaching, it's
Mm.
about lots of tick boxes, administration.
Yep.
You're teaching the subjects, you're also looking after the contact with uh,
Parents.
parents,
Oh, yep.
and
Yep.
so on and so forth. So there
Mm.
is lots to do. And how big are your classes? Because there is also lots to do with how big classes are. Sometimes there are 40
Mm.
to 50 in some classes in mainstreams. Do you have
Mm.
the classes this big or?
No, we in our school we try to keep a maximum of 20 in each class.
Mm,
We have some classes with up to 25 right now because it was a baby boom a few years back. But my class, for instance, I have 17 in my
mm,
in my class. 20 is a good round number. It's enough that you can actually get time with each student and so on. I don't understand how you could do any kind of quality work with like 40 kids in the classroom, because at that point it's basically instructing them, telling them, and I don't know. I think it's too much.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
the most extreme, and that was a few years ago. It was good and bad in some ways. I had a class of 6 students through grade 8 and 9, which was troublesome when they were fighting, because they might. It's like two people get at each other's throats in the classroom, and that means that half the class is now upset with each other.
oops.
Um,
Yeah.
but on the upside, when you had that, is you could have some seriously intricate and deep discussions about pretty much everything. You can go into, if you let's talk about history. We had 4 weeks of political history where we talk about the politics and everything that went through from the French Revolution up to the Cold War, end of the Cold War, and the discussions that you can get if there's only 6 students.
Mm.
It is on it's on such a different level than if you have a big class. But there's ups and downs in it.
I would have loved to sit in the corner of the class and actually listen to it because
Yeah. Then we went to Rome for 3 weeks to
awesome.
we had our last period, which is arts and culture. Um, uh, so we did that in Rome on the spot, so to speak.
I love
That was
it.
that was pretty
I,
cool. But that was 6 students. That's more tricky when you have 20 or.
Yeah, or more. Yeah, that's it makes sense. How is it with what's the word? Valuing their work. Do they have like do you give them A's to D's or fails or whatever? I mean, when I was
Yeah.
at my to up to my grammar school, I did my schooling in Czech Republic, which
Mm.
used to be actually Czechoslovakia. So the system of what's the word? I can't find the English word for it.
The
Uh,
grades.
the grades, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. The grades were 1 to 5, where
Yeah.
5 was a fail and 1 was you're perfect. So
Mm.
how is it with Waldorf school?
It's a bit different depending on which schools
Hmm.
you work with. Up to a few years ago, we did not need to give grades, which is actually the way I like it
Mm.
personally, because the grades themselves are a well. There's two things about the grades. One, grades really stress kids out, in my opinion. When you put grades in as low as third grade or sixth grade, and you come home and you realize that you have failed in a subject, that could be the end of the world for some kids. It's
Yeah.
really really bad. And up to that, it's only stress. Also, what does this as it is now between A to F, where A is a maximum, F is a fail. What does this number or letter actually say.
It makes no sense to me.
Because if you take a subject like history, for instance, it's huge.
Yeah.
So, or does it say that you know your way around the different time spans of what's happened, or does it make you understand cause and effect of anything? Does it make etc. So the digit itself doesn't mean much. So when I started working, it's changed now because of the laws in Sweden. But when I started working, when I sent off a ninth grader up to towards the gymnasium, I sent away maybe 5 or 6 A4s with text. They really just did not like that from the people who like sort through like
Applications,
which
yeah.
yeah applicate which kid, then they get this like 5 pages of, okay, so in history, well, the student has shown excellence from this but needs to work a little bit on that, so it's a bit insecure about this and should probably work this. So there's like
And
one.
they are like, where do I take the boxes? There are no tick
Exactly,
boxes.
exactly. There's no boxes to tick. They actually have to read the document.
And learn
And
about the kids
yeah, and
straight
they get
away.
to do that with all the kids. No, no, 20 kids come in on papers, and they really, really did not like that, I guess.
Mhm.
So eventually, it came down to that we in the Waldorf School had to give out grades as well.
Mhm.
But we have a leeway, at least in our school, that and a lot of others, that we don't have to do it until the ninth grade.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when the kids end eighth grade and start ninth, that's the first time they actually get to see the letters. Before that, we talk to them and we tell them what to work with, and we tell them where they're strong and what they're weak in, and etc. etc. And if you focus a bit on this and take a bit on that, you can just leave that for a while because you're very comfortable with that. So before and in ninth grade, they actually get the first letters, and that's how we do it basically.
Mhm. So
So we do
Mhm.
so
Go
we do
on.
use the letters, but we do it as late as possible.
That's good. For someone who has very structured mind and has been like living in this very structured world and may not understand. So how do the kids know how they are doing? How do the parents know what's
Well,
going on?
well,
How
we
what would you
meet
say?
we meet twice every year with the parents and the students. The students get continuously input on how they're doing, and we also of course keep track on what they're doing in different subjects and how they're doing and so on. It is it continuous communication,
Mhm.
but you can call it feedback basically,
I prefer
which
feedback, less
which is
stressful.
yeah, which is uh, let's see if I'm making the right formative feedback. Yes, basically telling them that work on this, work, do like this, do like that, and that'll be fine, etc., etc. And for some students, it's fantastic. I've had a few of those as well. Come into the meeting and we have discussion, and they're like, so what do you want to know? I go, and the kid says, well, actually, I figure like this, that if there is any problem with anything, you'd probably talk to me, right? I was like, yeah. So you haven't talked to me? Nope. So there's no problems? No. Okay, cool. Then I'm fine. Very chill.
That sounds very chill. You see,
Yeah.
you have mentioned the stress there from grading,
Mm,
and that stress and that pressure could
mm,
be like really big.
yeah.
And then you have got kids with also the psychological problems. But
Yeah.
then again, there is a school of thought that they need the pressure to learn about the world and to prepare
Mm.
for the real world.
But
So
I think,
there's
yeah, but
yeah,
I
go.
think, I think that they they need the structure and possibly the pressure, um, and I think they get it in
Hmm.
school without you having to add
Hmm.
um, extra stress to it.
Hmm.
I do believe that there's quite a lot of stressed out kids as it is right now. Mainly, in my opinion, because of social media. They are always hooked up. They're always online. They're always having to do this and do this and do that. And well, it's sets all the stress hormones going, and it'll be interesting to see what the what's it called what you call it the social media generation that comes out of it. How they actually will feel when they're like 30 years old or something.
Yeah, I'm wondering because I'm just thinking we actually have a very privileged position of having the perspective because we have lived like, half a quarter of our life through
Without
the time
internet.
without internet, without
Yeah,
mobile phones, without social media.
yeah.
And now we live, in this world where there is just so much stimuli from the outside world, from the social media and internet and so
Mhm.
on. So we can actually compare. They don't have the comparison. Their system is is just weighted down by so much stimuli from outside. And I see it on myself. It's like the older guard now
Yeah.
that I have to switch off. I have to be really disciplined about switching off from the world of online world, from
Mhm.
mobile phone, from internet, from social media, because I get overwhelmed. Like my system, my nervous system gets overloaded.
Mhm.
So I have to step away, whether they are in it continuously because that's what they are used to. That's what they live in from almost the beginning. Some of them very from the very beginning.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's an interesting question. What are they going to be? But then we have got lots of ADHD labels
Mhm.
and lots of other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's like just look at the on the situation with, like, if you are constantly hooked up, if you're constantly aware, you constantly need to watch your step. Um, the cortisol levels of your
mm,
system will be peaking all the time, which means that you will never really relax because the
mm,
body forgets to stop producing cortisol. And
overstimulated. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I had a it was an experiment I did. Um, Actually, this is quite this is about 10 years ago or something. Just when I started, we were talking about in school about addiction, and we were talking about, well, drugs and alcohol and tobacco and stuff like that. And we were talking about how much or how little cell phone use that the kids were doing. And this one girl in class, they were really upset that we took the phones. Even then, we talked about 10 years that we actually took the
Mm.
phones. And she was like, "But I need to have my phone. I need to see." Well, what do you need to see? What's it's going to be there when you like when the school day is over. You get it at 3 o'clock. No, you don't understand. If somebody says something about me online at 9 o'clock in the morning, by the time I get back at 1500, that lie, if somebody is lying, will have turned into a truth because so many
Oh,
people will have said something
seen.
about it. So when I get back at 3 o'clock, there's no way that I can like prevent it from happening because maybe at that point 100 people will have had a comment, and by that time the lie that somebody posted has turned into truth, which means that, well, you understand.
That's a threatening situation basically for her.
Very much so. So, and if you
Yeah.
imagine that you have that stress constantly every day, 24/7. So the experiment we did was we took all our phones and we locked them into the school vault, and we left them there for 48 hours. They didn't get them.
Wow.
They didn't get to take them home. They didn't get to do anything with them. And they got a little book that they had to write down their experiences, especially if they had any kind of withdrawal symptoms. And they had several of the kids. They woke up in the morning. They had stomach aches. They felt stressed. They felt sweaty. They couldn't sleep, etc., etc., etc. And
Yeah.
this is 10 years ago.
Uh, So now, 10 years later, that's even more so.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to say, hello, my younger niece. She used to sleep with her mobile phone like this. And I made her switch it off for one night when I was sharing the room with her. And it was terribly traumatizing for her. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was just waving at her if she did this. So yeah,
Yeah.
but it is traumatizing. And the pressure of this and the pressure of comparison as well. So
Yeah.
there is always like, what if I miss or something? And also comparing yourself to others on social media, that is
Yeah.
another thing. Do you see it amongst your kids too at school?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's even though in some ways we are, I assume, more used to it, not having the cell phones and so on, and they're pretty chill with it mostly. I do see it, of course, because you see it in the whole society.
And that
Uh,
takes us back to what you, in a nice circle, to what you were mentioning earlier on about confidence
mm,
and self-value,
mm,
because that is what you have to learn at this age when you're at
yeah,
school. That is all that impact that you're taking in, and that's what teachers are helping with as well. Like,
mm,
it's not just about the subjects, but it's preparation skills for life, not
yeah.
just knowledge. Yeah. So how do you deal with this? The confidence, the values, how to value themselves.
We talk, we talk a lot about these things. Um, every morning when I begin school, there's at least half an hour where basically I watch the news day before, and we talk about what's happened in the world. And I would say that 7 times out of 10, there's there is ways um, that they can connect to something, that
Mm-hmm.
they can try to relate to something, they can understand that their situation is sometimes a hell of a lot better, or a hell of a lot, you know. Um, for me, the one of the major tools to help with um, self-esteem and confidence is that you need to learn perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand your place in the world, your situation, that everything is not just evolving around you. There is a bigger picture. Um, and I've been doing this for a long time. Right now, of course, the news reels have been mainly about the situation in Palestine
Mm-hmm.
and Gaza and everything. Before that, Ukraine. Um, but sometimes, it can be such an easy thing as, you know, you usually get a, what's it called, inspel in Swedish. So some students say something, and you can hook onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
Mm-hmm.
start talking about it. And I know, for instance, if you go back a few years, there was the student who thought that something was so terribly unfair to him. Uh, and at that point, I knew that he had just gotten himself a new kick bike that he was driving around. And a kick bike in Swedish crowns is about, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 crowns maybe, or 200 pounds or so. So at that point, and not to be mean, but sometimes it's good to put some kids on the spot so they actually understand a little bit. So I turned to the kid and said, "You think this is unfair?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's unfair." Okay, really unfair? Yes, it's fucking unfair. It was something about, I don't know, they were served only greens at food or something. So you think you've been treated unfairly? And at this point, it's kind of fun. The rest of the class, they're like, "Oh shit, there's something coming now," and he can't see that he's stepping right into it. And he goes, "Okay, yeah, yeah, it's okay." So you know what? Didn't you just get a kick bike? Yeah. Did you work for that? Did you actually go to work and pay money to buy your kickback? No. So you got it for free from your parents? Yeah. They actually worked so you can get a kickback. How? highly unfair that you should get a kick bike for free, right? He's like, yeah, but it's not the same thing. No, wait. Do you have two legs? Yeah, so you can drive a kick bike. Yeah, of course I have two legs, and actually 2 feet as well. Yes, I have 2 feet. Do you know that there are children that, like, they go to school, and for some odd reason somebody forgot something there, and somebody blows their foot off, so they don't have a foot anymore or a leg.
Mhm.
They can't kick a kick bike because they have one leg. Is it still unfair? Do you live in an unfair world? And I was like, no, I guess not. And so,
Perspective.
yeah,
Yes,
they
learning.
need to learn perspective.
Mhm,
And for
mhm.
me, when you understand perspective, that there's a bigger thing, then you can relate to your own world in a different way. And that, in my opinion, makes you also stronger, because what could feel like the end of the world because you, I don't know, got tomato poured on your pants, it's not the end of the world. So,
Yeah.
I guess that's one of the tools that I use for this whole thing, to help them learn perspective.
And it's great because some adults have not learned perspective and they are learning it while they are adults, and
My
some
God,
never learn it.
no. I usually tell my students in this kind of fun, like I almost like enforce it, that you people, you need to leave Scandinavia. You need to move outside of Scandinavia for about 2 to 3 years and work somewhere else to get a perspective on the absolute amazing life we have in Scandinavia. It's enough to move to Ireland. Trust me, I lived there. In some ways, it's a development country. I mean, well, it was when I was there at least.
Sorry,
So
Irish people, we don't mean anything by that.
no, it was a
But it
lovely,
is a difference.
lovely place to be, but coming from the infrastructure that we had here,
Sweden.
yeah. So no, there's no. I love living in Ireland, but it was very different.
Well, let's
And
face it, most of Europe doesn't have the infrastructure that Sweden has, because you
yeah,
guys,
and
you have very good
it,
infrastructure.
and it's about it's pretty much the same thing in Sweden, in Denmark, Finland, Norway. So I think that you need to try to live outside of Scandinavia to understand that it's actually a pretty decent place to be.
I'm telling that to people as well, not just kids. It is enlightening traveling around the world, because then you will find out that you live in a bubble
Yes,
and that you need to see the perspective of the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is different and is much bigger than we in our distortion in media and sitting in the middle of our bubble
absolutely,
seats. So
absolutely.
yeah, it is. Listen, um, what was your toughest case? What was your toughest case that you're proud of, though, how it ended up?
Um, oh, that's an interesting one. Depends on what you mean by the toughest.
You
The
know, like
long.
someone tells you this kid is really like difficult, it's lost case, or it's like no one's don't they don't know what to do with him or her, it's just nothing seemed to be working. And
Mm, mm.
how do you approach the tough cases then?
Well, the tough cases I usually approach just straight head on. For some odd
Feng
reason,
Shui.
for some odd reason, I get tough cases quite often.
Mhm.
Um, of course, that class that I took, it was a working problem. It was not a specific tough case, um, but there was definitely some work to be put in there. No, I think that the toughest cases are the ones where you feel that it's almost impossible to do anything. Um, and I think that the toughest case still is a situation where I got I got to be mentor to this kid, right? And kid pretty much is never in school. If the kid is in school, then doesn't do anything, just gives lots of attitude and bullshit. So I meet quite often. We talk, and I try to do all kinds of things, and we try to do all kinds of different ways to teach, or to sit in the classroom, modify assignments, blah 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 blah, the whole shebang. Nothing works. Um, and at one point, this is quite late. It's been going on for a few years actually.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I just sit down with the kid, and I go, so so if you got a chance to do anything in the world, no money is like hindering you, no time, no nothing. What would you like to do? At that point, he basically says that I would like to go and drive motocross in the States. Okay. So what's with the States? It's the best circuit there is. There's no question about it. Okay. But why motocross? What's up with that? You know? And he goes, well, it's the only time that I don't think. Because if I start thinking, I crash.
Mm-hmm.
So when I drive, I just have to go with the flow, and I just have to be in the situation. Because if I start like to think on the situation, then I crash and I can injure myself. At that point, I was like, what we've been trying to do has been torture to this kid for the last 2 years. Because that's the only thing we're trying to get him to do, to think. Think.
And crash, 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 crash.
Crash. Every day. So at that point, it was kind of fun. I did one of those I'll apologize later kind of thing. I didn't ask permission. I'll apologize later. So I called up the parents and I told them the situation that we've been going at this all wrong. This is just fucked up. Can I try something else? And they're like, you can do whatever you want. Feel free. So I decided that I was going to try to get him a job instead. So a tryout job in a motorcycle shop where he can
like apprenticeship.
Yeah, apprenticeship to fix motorcycles.
Uh-huh.
So I started calling around the island for different places, and I got hooked. I got connected with a place, and they're like, yeah, sure. If you like bikes, you can come here and I'll work with them. If he knows anything is better, otherwise you can teach something. So I set up a plan. Then I told my principal, like, hello, I need to take this kid out of the school system for a moment. I have arranged this, blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay. So yes, I just need this to happen now because we can't continue what we're doing because that's just ain't fair. It's fucking or royally. So he actually did. He actually went into a motorcycle grease shop for the last 3 months of school, and I guess that's the toughest case that I have to be working around because after so many years of of, of, of not going well for this kid, and I got to be mentor for the last year or so, year 1.5 maybe. But yeah, at that point we could actually do something different, and it was all about and he didn't fail. At that, he was actually good. So he didn't learn anything from school. He didn't go out with any grades or anything like that. But he actually got out from school with knowledge that he could do something else. He would just not fail and fail and fail.
Yeah, so imagine the difference, right? There is a damaged kid that just thinks I can't learn, I'm not good enough, and I'm crashing all the time. No good, right? Programming conditioning, or kid that got to do something that really means something to him, and he knows he's good at it. So yeah, as you said, it was torture before.
I
If
think
if
so. I think so.
yeah. No,
So,
that's amazing that this
but it
could be
is.
done.
But I don't know if it can be done. We did it. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure we were allowed to do it that way.
It
Um,
worked. Less
Eh,
one less damaged person. That's a good word.
Yeah,
work,
I
you know.
guess. But same way, we're suffering as well as many others from the a rather rigid way of the school system. A lot of kids that is forced into a form that might or might not be fully functioning for them.
We know this. That reminds me of this. This reminds me of the meme that is going around, where there's a picture of a tree, a
Mm,
teacher, and then you have a lineup of animals from fish and lizards and snakes to birds, monkey and zebra.
mm,
And the teacher says, "So your finals exams, you get A's if you can climb this tree."
mm.
Yeah, and
Yep,
it's a great meme, I think. You know.
yep. Yeah, I like the one that the same thing with the what's called the preposterous bed. I think
Oh, don't
uh,
know that one.
that's basically it's like a Greek story that this dude who is having a hotel and all the beds are the same size. So when people that are too short come in, he pulls them longer, and if
Ah,
they're too long, he chops off some feet or something so they fit into the bed. Um, and the whole the meaning of it is the school system in many ways is shaped around a specific shape that everybody should fit into, and if you don't fit in, you will fit in either by physical means or by elbows or by medication.
yes.
So
Chop off the bits that are too big for the box,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I believe I believe that I do believe that medication is definitely something that is needed sometimes. um, but I also believe that we can do a lot of things without medication. You can do lots with food, you can do lots with routines, you can do lots with other things, um, if you're willing to do that work.
That's true. And that could be like a whole different hour of podcast where we would talk about ADHD and food and lifestyle and approaches. And, we can go on about that one too.
Absolutely.
There's a whole different podcast that we might look into for the future. Listen, this hour has gone real fast. I don't even know how.
Damn.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah.
We could keep talking and I would love to,
Mhm.
but I respect your time and I know you have got kids there as well and a wife that
They're
you have
very
to
silent
return
now,
to.
so I don't know. Maybe they're going to
Maybe
bed.
they are listening or they are
Yeah.
asleep finally. Or they are up to something. That's
They
always
are, absolutely.
that's always like suspicious if they are going quiet. Listen, is there anything that you would like to mention that we haven't mentioned yet and that just feels like you would like to say it? Or is there anything that you would like to say as a message to those that are listening to us?
Yeah, there's one thing actually. When I started my education to become Waldorf teacher, we had this really kick-ass teacher, Ivar, uh, who was he began the whole lecture when we started the school with telling this great story on why he became a teacher. That it's the best job in the goddamn world, and so on. But he also said something incredibly scary, but also inspiring to me.
Mhm.
He said that um, when you're a teacher, you don't know if you have been a good or a bad teacher until 30 years after your kids have graduated.
Mm.
Because that's when they're out in society making real decisions that affect real people. That's when they're sitting in boards, that's when they're sitting in the politics, that's when they're doing stuff as an adult. And you don't know if you have done a good teacher's job until some time
Mhm.
has passed. And for me, that was like incredibly inspiring. uh,
Great responsibility, yeah.
it's like responsibility as hell, but also, of course, scary. Imagine that responsibility that you take upon yourself, that you know, for instance, like look at my students now, the first ones that I let go 13 years ago, there are about 28 now, I think. I think they're 28,
Wow.
which means that they're getting there. 28, 30, 35. That's when you're going to see some serious discussions and stuff. And I hope, I hope that they do good things, and I hope that some things for what I've taught them might actually stick. So when they're sitting in that situation and they're sitting around a dinner and meeting somebody who is saying that life is so bloody unfair, maybe they can sit there and say, you know what, it ain't that bad. You know, check it out.
They will say, I had this one teacher that that
Yeah,
taught me something about perspective
could be.
that I remember for the rest of my life. There you go.
I remember one of the kids when she quit that first class that I let go. Got a thank you note at the graduation, and it basically said, "Thank you for everything that you taught us, especially the things that had nothing to do with school."
Everything with life.
Yeah.
And
So
that's it.
that's it.
That's it. That's
That's it, and
awesome.
that's that.
That's that. Thank you so much for this talk. I really enjoyed it. And I could have gone on. Maybe we can carry on and have part two at
We
some
can.
point.
Yep, absolutely.
And for those that listened here with us, thank you for spending your time with us. And if you have any questions for us and for this theme, maybe you could let us
Do
know
we do
under
we
the
actually have
video.
any listeners? Do we know if anyone is actually
We
listening?
will, we will, we do. We have subscribers even already.
Really? Wow.
Yes, a few.
Have we
So,
been on video as well?
no, no, no. We haven't. We are not going live, but
Okay.
on the YouTube channel, we have subscribers, we have listeners. So
Okay.
those of you who have listened to us and will
All
listen
right.
to us in the future, if you have any questions for
Sure.
Roger and or
Absolutely.
anything about this topic, let us know.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe somebody comes out. He's just full of shit. He's talking bullshit all the time.
Oh well, we could have a discussion about that too. We might turn them
Absolutely.
around.
Sure.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you so much, and
Take
I'm
care.
looking forward to next time. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.